Everything from clothing to household items are getting more expensive each day. The world of fast fashion has complicated clothing production by outsourcing around the world to whoever can sew them the cheapest. And now you, the consumer, are paying the price with rising costs. American Giant is about keeping things simple and close to home. They aren't affected by tariffs because their products never leave the U.S. So when you buy from American Giant, you're taking a stand for hardworking people, local communities, and quality clothes. American Giant directly supports American manufacturers and ensures you aren't footing that tariff bill. Support American-made, tariff-free clothing with American Giant with American Giant. Get 20% off your first order when you use promo code STAPLE20 at american-giant.com. That's 20% off when you use code STAPLE20 at american-giant.com.
In a so-called free state, officials and stakeholders concoct solutions to problems often created by other bureaucrats and with little regard for infringements on the people. These stories are born at the apex of freedom and entrepreneurship. We foolishly advocate for the taxpayer. Brian's Beat presents Freedom Fools.
No, it's not a sequel. Good afternoon. Welcome. Warming up pretty nicely. Good day to get outside. I hear a couple of people are thinking about driving down to the beach. If you go that way, take the WBSM app. And it feels good to be back on a Saturday afternoon. How are you today? Good. Glad to hear it. On this date, in 2006, Julian Assange launched WikiLeaks. Wonder what he's thinking about that. What if he's having second thoughts after all that he put up with? That was in 2006. The quote of the day: sometimes life hits you in the head with a brick. Don't lose faith. Sometimes life hits you in the head with a brick. Don't lose faith. Steve Jobs, Apple. Steve Jobs. I'm going to talk about Apple in a bit on the show this afternoon. I am watching the TV for a couple of things. I'm wondering if there's going to be any information about negotiations between Hamas and whomever to clarify the open-ended questions that have not been answered. I've heard ABC News and I've read several reports that, yes, Hamas did agree to releasing the hostages. But the way that I'm reading it and the way others seem to be reading it is that that's still contingent on working out the other parts of the deal. It's not like, okay, we're going to give up the hostages and then we're going to work out the other stuff. That would be, if you're Hamas, why would you do that? Why would you give up? And I say hostages, from what I'm understanding, those that are left are Israeli soldiers, so they're prisoners of war. But we can get into the semantics at another time. Why would you, if you're Hamas now, why would you release your seemingly last bargaining chip without having definitive answers? If you'd like to talk about that, I don't know. I know some people think that the president gave a deadline of our president, a deadline of Sunday. That means that Hamas is releasing the hostages tomorrow. I have not seen anything. I see no indication that that is in the works. 508-996-0500. I do have the TV on ESPN right now. Not that I'm waiting for playoff baseball. I was trying to watch some of the college football. And the game that's on right now is Clemson, and they're beating the tar out of the Tar Heels, North Carolina. And I can't help but think Bill Belichick is the head coach at North Carolina. The team has not performed well. And what does all of this do for his legacy? I mean, let's face it, the 20 plus years here, I mean, that is the legacy. His time in Cleveland, his time as an assistant with the New York Giants and the New York Jets, nobody really gives a hoot about that. When you think about Bill Belichick's legacy, and I do believe he'll go into the Hall of Fame, it's going to be what was built in Foxborough. And to see how his team is performing right now, he can't command 18, 19, 20, 21, 22-year-olds the same way he could do with professional football players. He can't say, all right, you need to be here at 4 o'clock in the morning. He only has X amount of hours he can use for football practice, where it's different as a pro. I wish the guy the best. I don't know that it's going to pan out for him. Okay, I just wanted to get that off my chest. Tuesday is preliminary election day in the city of New Bedford. I was reading it. There really, without trying to be mean about that, there really isn't much to show up for. Now, there are 12 at-large city council candidates. I made that statement lumping you in with everything else. But as far as, your assessor race and your school committee race, that there really isn't. I think the only thing for voters to decide will be whittling down from 12 to 10 the at-large city council candidates. And that's important. Please don't get me wrong. But it's not like you're thinking about a ward race, school committee race. I mean, there will be a school committee race, but I don't think that they're involved in the preliminary. I think the only thing is going to be this at-large councilor race. And basically, you're whittling from 12 down to 10. Is there anyone in particular that you're hot on? There's going to be at least one new member because Linda Morad has decided that 20 years is enough. So is there anyone in particular that you like here or that you don't like, that you're saying, scratch this person off the list, or you're giving a big, bold check mark for that person? And if nobody's talking about it, it seems to fit in line. According to, I don't know who the researcher was. Who was the person who decided that they wanted to comment on this? Let's see. Sherry Silva Santos, 41 years of experience with the New Bedford Election Commission, is predicting a turnout of 6%, 12% for the major election in November. 6%. Now, granted, 6% because there really isn't a lot to vote on, but if you had contested races for the ward seats, if you had contested races for the school committee, I'm talking about preliminary contested races, do you think that there would be a larger turnout? Past history seems to tell us if it were a little bit higher, it wouldn't be much. For whatever reason, people don't show up for these preliminary elections. And you have to ask why. Now, the easy, almost logical answer is because people don't think that the politicians care about them. And in some instances, I would have to say, you're absolutely right. But there has to be more to it than that. For instance, not enough candidates to choose from. And I think we've talked about why people decide not to run for office. They see the scrutiny that other candidates and office holders get, and they don't want to put themselves through it. They certainly don't want to put their family through that type of ringer. It indeed takes a very special person to run for city council, to run for mayor, select person. And then as you get into the state rep, state senator, Congress people, U.S. senator, governor, you have to be very thick-skinned to run for some of these positions, especially if you know you've done, I won't say heinous type things in your background, but things that are skeletons in your closet that, you know, it might have been fun as a kid in college, but do you want other folks talking about it? For many guys, and I've had a few conversations, for many guys, the reason why they don't want to run for office is because sometimes they used language referring to women, about women, girls in college, that they don't want to come back to haunt them because today, that type of language isn't acceptable. And while you may have stated it in a joking manner, today that is no longer a joke. And that guy might not even talk like that anymore. But it's there, and who knows, you may have offended somebody, or maybe you didn't offend her at that particular time, but as she has grown up and realizes some of the things that you said and or did, the fear is in his head that it could come out. If you have ever gone through the process of running for public office, and I'm talking about not dog catcher, but city council and above. And I can't speak for the New Bedford City Council, but I can speak for the Boston City Council because I saw people running and covered Boston City Council elections. The questionnaire that they go through as they try to put a campaign together, the campaign manager wants to know everything. Did you do this? When did you do it? Who did you do it to? Is it something that they need? Seriously, they need to cover up because it could come up down the road. And I think as people see all of the different things that are going on right now, when it comes to sexual relations, and I do mean even gender relations, not trans or anything like that. I'm talking about he said, she said, that type of stuff. Never mind anything that might be more flagrant than that. Or I was fooling around, but she didn't think so. Or maybe she kind of laughed at that time. But now that you're running for office, it's an entirely different story. So if you sit down and talk to some men that had aspirations, or maybe semi-aspirations about running for office, and they have made a decision, no. In the back of their head, some of them, not all of them. And certainly, if you are of the age of 45, 50, 55, up into your mid-60s and thinking about running for office, times were different when you were a kid in the 60s and the 70s than being a kid in the 90s and the 2K era. So I shouldn't blame, I'm not making a blame, but that whole scenario has blotted out a whole bunch of male candidates. I can't speak for the female side of that street because, quite frankly, most females didn't act that way, at least back in my college days. So you look at it from that side of the street, now you've got a whole bunch of candidates that you're looking at and you're saying, this is what I have to choose from. And then you wonder why 6%. That's the guesstimation for voter turnout with the preliminary election. 508-996-0500. Sorry to keep you waiting. Hello.
Is that me?
No, it's you.
Yeah, certainly is. Now, Brian, there's a lot of alienation amongst voters, and that's because we're supposed to have a democracy, but those in charge, mayors, city councilors, they really don't want any widespread, open suggestions from the people, or they would allow and encourage more ballot questions, not just from the voters, but from their own offices proposed to keep people interested that their vote counts on specific issues and not just political personalities running for office. So
Good
I
point.
think there's a big break between representative democracy and regular democracy, and it's unfortunately alienated. Now, I vote all the time, but half of the time I'm holding my nose at voting, and the other half of the time I just feel guilty if I don't participate somehow in democracy. But it is very frustrating that there's all kinds of issues and there's no ballot questions on them, even if they're non-binding. That would at least give people a voice.
Yeah, when I think of non-binding, I'm thinking, well, why do I really care? Because it's not going to mean anything.
Oh, yes, it will mean something because it will be in the public spotlight what the people really want. Like, for example, rent stabilization. I know you don't like it, but they definitely killed that as a ballot question because it would show the majority, not a great majority, but the majority of people in New Bedford, which now is considered about 60% rentals, they would be for it. Now, it wouldn't be binding, but it would put pressure on the politicians to respond to the people's needs on specific issues.
So great. I'm glad you brought that one up. Why make it non-binding? Why not make it binding?
Well, that would depend upon the particular issue involved, wouldn't it? Some of them are future plans that may or may not show up. Like, for example, that golf course project on Hathaway Road, where they were going to have all kinds of industries there, and they reached out to them. The mayor was active in doing that, and they're not coming. But for the area neighbors, they all knew it would be a big traffic problem at Hathaway Road
Yeah.
and the turnoff.
I want you to go back to that rent control, because I mean that is a valid one right there. And you're right.
Well, so is your neighborhood.
But what I'm saying is, folks were thinking non-binding with that. If you did a binding question, and there are a couple of counselors that would certainly want that. I would have thrust that onto the voters and let the voters make that decision.
You're talking about the rent stabilization?
Yes.
You would have, yeah. Well, who knows what will happen on the state level that
I think it's going to pass.
Possible.
I think it's going to pass.
It would force politicians to take an open position on certain things, like that Hathaway Road project. And while it would make money in tax dollars, how would it impact all the residents and anybody who wants to shop headed towards the north end or down Hathaway Road to the mall, etc.? Traffic congestion, accidents, which are blooming all over the state. If you follow the news, all kinds of accidents that happen. So, both options, and it could be debated whether it should be binding or just a question or a poll. I've never received a poll. I get polls all the time on my phone. I got one on medical facilities in the area. It was a half-hour questionnaire, which I followed. But I don't get any polls on New Bedford issues. Do you?
No, I don't live in New Bedford.
Well, even as a subsidiary suburb, a lot affects Dartmouth. So where are the polls? They don't really want to know.
You know what?
They don't really want to know what the population majorities think about issues.
Well, I think it's a matter of who's sending out the polls. I don't think the politicians send out polls anymore. But I do think that there are interest groups that do. But the other part of that is it's very expensive to do mailings. Most of the time when people are trying to do these types of surveying, they do it online.
Periodically.
Telephone or online.
I don't know how much that's costing the businesses and corporations or, people involved in it. But I welcome them. Yeah, I welcome polls. There's very few that I turn down unless I'm about to go out for an appointment, etc. So more polling, more ballot questions, more participation for Joe and Jane average in the voice of democracy. Otherwise, we're all I'm alienated, but I'm fighting it to go. I'm a super voter. I vote in everything, but it doesn't make me necessarily feel good about it.
Gotcha. Hey, thanks for the call.
And thanks for the subject.
No problem. I appreciate it. 508-996-0500. Yeah, the rent stabilization thing, if I was, I am against rent stabilization or rent control. However, I am of the opinion that the ballot question that United Interfaith Action was on the radio here 2 or 3 weeks ago talking about it, I do believe that it will make the 2026 election ballot, and I have no real reason today, which is October 4, 2025, I have no real reason today to believe that ballot question will not pass. I will not vote for it. But I find it hard to believe with the economy, the way that it is, and people belly aching and folks basically grasping at straws to try to fix what they're not quite sure is broken, except that they know it's broken, that they will vote in rent control. It might be close, but I think that rent control will be coming back. That's not what I want. That's just how I feel. And maybe that's why the city council decided, well, let's just scrap it, because they knew that folks would be working on it. And in fact, they knew that there was a bill up on Beacon Hill in regards to it. 508-996-0500. Hello.
Hey, Paul. Hey, did you notice that there's a brand new congressman now in Virginia, and he hasn't gotten sworn in, right? Are you familiar with this?
Nope. Why should I be?
Well, there's or it's Brian. Sorry about that. Yeah, I thought I recognized the voice. Well, they had a special election a couple of weeks ago because the congressman down there died. Mm-hmm. And he got replaced, and the brand new congressman is not getting sworn in.
Why is that?
And, well, the government shutdown is giving the excuse. See, this guy, when he campaigned, he said that he would vote to release the Epstein file. And they only needed one more vote in that committee to release the Epstein file, and he would be it. So they're keeping the government shut down to avoid having the Epstein file released.
You think that that's the reason?
I personally, I do.
So you don't believe anything dealing with health care or any of the other issues that the Democrats were stating? You believe that they want to keep this one person from casting that vote dealing with Epstein. And by the way, that person would have to know exactly what date that kind of a vote would be coming up in order to make that vote. And the Republicans control Congress, so why would they even allow that vote to come up?
Well, it's a committee vote, and
But who runs the committee?
Well, I catch your point, but they're still refusing to allow this congressman. See, you do know that the House is pretty evenly divided, right? Democrats
yes.
and Republicans.
Mm-hmm.
And just by allowing this one guy to get sworn in changes the balance of power. And the idea that if you remember, all of those DOGE cuts that ripped apart all of these agencies of government, do you know how many people are starving to death per day because of the USAID cuts? Do you know how many people are dying per day just because the USAID cuts are happening? All of these, sections of American power are being ripped apart because Donald Trump and Hegseth want to attack American cities just on a whim, and it's basically because of Jeffrey Epstein. They do not want the Jeffrey Epstein material to come out because there are members of Congress that are in that list. And the balance of power would shift instantly.
So while I don't know about this guy from Virginia, should I believe that he is a Democrat?
Yeah.
Okay. And the Democrats don't want him to be sworn in? Why aren't they coming out and belly aching about it?
Well, where do you think the Democrats don't want him sworn in?
I didn't know about this until you brought it up, so I'm going to let you tell me why.
It's been discussed for the last, maybe 2 days since the government has been shut down. What's his name? Mike, Speaker of the House. Has
Johnson.
Been, eager, yeah, he's been eager to shut it down. And, if you just think about the sheer irresponsibility of the only purpose of the House of Representatives is to put together a budget for America, right? That the purpose of the House of Representatives is each district says what they need, and each representative goes to Washington, D.C. to make sure that their congressional district gets what they need. And the purpose of the House of Representatives is to put together a budget, and they've had since, the end of the last term. Normally, in a healthy economy or in a healthy America, they put together the budget so when inauguration comes, the budget is laid out before the president, and he can just run smoothly with that budget. But Mike Johnson didn't do a budget. And they didn't do a budget. They put it off until October 1st, and then they decide to shut down government rather than do their jobs.
Yeah, well, I think you got it partly right there. I see both sides at odds here, and I would agree with you that there are probably Democrats as well as Republican members of Congress that are in the Epstein files. I do appreciate your call. Thank you much. Let's continue. Hello.
Hello, is that me?
That is you.
I was listening to the gentleman before about talking, or someone mentioned the 6%, the estimated people that are going to vote.
Me.
Yeah, and that's really criminal. That's a crime, isn't it? Around the world, people die for the right to vote, and we have the right to vote, and we don't participate. When I owned my business, I voted. I guess I voted every election since I was 18, or when I could. And I did have a business. And I would say to my employees, if you go vote, I'll pay for your time off. And a lot of them who, weren't highly educated would say, Lee, I appreciate it, but it doesn't matter how I vote because nothing changes. Mm. So people get discouraged when they go to vote because they really, number one, they have that opinion that things don't change. And there's so much confusion as to what's on the ballot and what's not on the ballot and the issues in today's day and age that it's baffling.
I concur with all that you just stated. How do you make it simpler?
One other thing, though, I'm not, in a scale of 1 to 10, I started following politics when I came to New Bedford in the 60s, maybe around 68. I got married, started having a family, and I voted both ways. I vote for the person, but for the most part, I'm a conservative, but I'm a liberal conservative. But I still get confused, and I listen to CNN, I listen to Fox, I read the Wall Street Journal, I read articles from the New York Times, and I say, holy crap, I wish I could go to someplace where I could actually know what's going on and what the truth is. Because everybody paints a picture for their agenda and what they like, and they're very convincing.
Well, you, I don't know how convincing you are, but you've got me wondering. So you are conservative liberal. You're a liberal conservative. Go ahead and break that down for me.
Well, I'm not a way out redneck conservative, and I bend on certain social issues. I'm sort of conservative on fiscal situations, and sometimes I ask my friends, if you take the real right wing away from the Republican Party and you take the real left wing away from the Democratic Party and take abortion out of the issue, what is the difference between being a Republican and being a Democrat? And very few people can give me a make sense answer.
So let's see. You take the right wing out of the Republicans and you take the left wing out of the Democrats, then what are you going to get? What do you have then? Is that supposed to be middle America?
Well, that's what I'm asking. So why do they fight each other all the time? I'll
tell you, let me answer your question. They fight each other all the time because they want to keep it a two-party system.
Well, that's criminal.
Well, it might be, but that's what they're doing. I mean, it's right there. It is right there in front of our face.
I listen to your shows quite often. I think you got a pretty good handle on things, and you're a pretty common sense guy. But it's beyond my comprehension. You have 400 and some people in the House of Representatives. Let's say they're split down the middle. You have a Pelosi that can take 200 people and say, when I say jump, every single one of them says how high and when. Mm-hmm. What kind of people are we electing that they don't have a mind of their own?
People that are going for money. People that are going for the money.
Yeah, so how can we as That's why the guy that worked for me, nothing changes. I did have the opportunity once to serve on a finance committee, and after being on it for a couple of years, I got discouraged.
Why?
Because, well, we can't change the electric bill. You know, when you're looking at budgets, you can't change the electric bill. You can't change the gas. You can't change the insurance for the town. You can't change the union wages. You can't change this. So what it all boiled down to at the end of the year.
So what city, what town?
I'd rather not say it this time, but it's a local town.
Oh, well, I figured we were a pretty local station, but the reason why I ask you, I'm a town meeting member
I'll tell you, Marion.
Okay. Well, I'm a town meeting member in Dartmouth, and I watch town meeting all the time. And when we have our votes, I listen to how the select board and how the finance committee voted on all these different issues. Most of the time, the finance committee is either unanimous or one vote off. You know, one other person voted off. And I sit there and I say, you know, this might as well just be the rubber stamp committee. People get upset when I do that, but, you know, that's how I feel it is. And I'm listening to you, and it seems like it's the same thing, or it was the same thing where we're in Marion, where you were.
Yeah, well, I had the reputation of being the 600-pound gorilla in the room.
Yeah.
Because I just didn't go along with everything.
Good for you.
But by the same token, I also served on a couple of committees. I had being a privilege of being chairman, and I didn't want to be down the line and vote against each other all the time. I also believe in consensus. If I'm on a committee of 7 people and 6 people think something should be one way and I don't, I'm going to vote for them, and I'll let them know I don't agree, but I'll vote with you to make a consensus. You can't always be on the other side of an issue and fight to the death when everybody else wants something.
I guess we can agree to disagree on that one. I do appreciate your call.
Thank you.
Thank you. 508-996-0500. I often state I'm an advocate for the taxpayer. And if I as a town meeting member, I represent I think we're District 3. I keep on forgetting. I will ask people how they feel about XYZ issue. And as I go to vote, if the folks in my district feel strongly about something, then I'm going to vote for it, whether I feel strongly about it or not. That stated, as I said, I am an advocate for the taxpayer. If I don't see representation for the amount of tax dollars that are being offered up, I ain't voting for it. That's the way I've always been. 508-996-0500. Freedom Fools on WBSM.
Power to the people. Power to the people.
This is WBSM.
Here's what's happening this week on Town Square Sunday. Kim Goddard has details on AHA Night in downtown New Bedford on October 9th. We'll see plenty of music, a great pumpkin parade, and lots of Halloween fun. Supreme Perfections Dance Studio in Fairhaven is staging a celebrity jail and bail fundraiser this month. Lori Trueheart tells us about the event and who their first jailer will be. And St. Joseph's Church on Spring Street in Fairhaven has a long list of repairs and renovations that need doing. We'll have details on a fundraiser happening on October 11th and 12th, so you can help out. I'm Jim Phillips. Join me for Town Square Sunday. Sunday morning at 6 and 11 on 1420 WBSM and 99.5 FM.
You know how politicians take advantage of a crisis. Would it be okay if I do the same? The Small Business Administration is closed during the shutdown. However, owners still have a viable option. It's called Alternative Capital through Legitimate Business Funders. At Legitimate Business Funders, owners can get up to $2 million with no collateral in just a few days. To find out more, go to legitimatebusinessfunders.com. legitimatebusinessfunders.com.
There's no better fool than the Freedom Fools. Now, back to Brian.
Freedom, freedom.
We're not going to do things that are to the detriment of American operational or tactical capabilities. President Trump is committed to delivering the best possible military.
Welcome back to Freedom Fools. Been talking about the fact that we've got the preliminary election coming up on Tuesday in the city of New Bedford. 12 candidates running for at-large city councilor. And I believe, and somebody will correct me if I'm wrong, I believe that is the only race on the ballot, on the preliminary ballot. So basically, those that go to vote, you will have the option of voting for 10 people out of the 12. And then what happens is the two with the lowest vote count will be off the ballot for the November election that's coming up, 5 weeks from now? 4 weeks from now. 4 weeks from Tuesday. Burgo, Abreu, Gomes, Carney, Saunders, Mulvey, Cotter, Miyato, Burns, Arruda, Roy, Lima. Those are your choices. Sadly, it's estimated that 6% of registered voters in the city of New Bedford are going to show up. 6%. And we've had conversation. Why do you think this is? And it's not the first time. And I do realize it's a preliminary election. Folks will say, well, there's no mayoral race. And that's true. There is no mayoral race. But even if there was, doesn't mean that there would be a preliminary election. You might have two candidates running for mayor, and you're not going to have a preliminary in that case. And even in years when there has been a mayoral race, it's been very low voter turnout for the preliminary. You know, one of the things that I think, and please correct me if you think I'm wrong with this, as much as I cherish the freedom, voting is a responsibility. Voting is you are taking time out of your day to go to wherever to vote. You don't know if you're going to stand in line or you're going to have just easy access in and out. And sometimes I really do believe that we are called on so many different times to vote. Now, part of me might be wired differently because I also vote as a town meeting member at town meeting. But I do believe there are people that are saying, you know, as the previous caller stated, I go to vote, I make my votes, and then nothing seems to change. And then I'm asked to go vote again, and nothing really seems to change. And then I go and vote again. You think about it. In 2026, folks are going to go to the polls. There's going to be a preliminary election for the state reps and the state senators and the gubernatorial race and, all of those. All right, there'll be a preliminary, and then there'll be the election. So you're going to be voting twice. Just like if you live in the city of New Bedford, you're called upon to vote twice in this particular case. 2028, as in 2024, you have a presidential primary that you get out and vote. And then you vote in the primary for the state reps and the Congress people and that one. And then you've got the general election. So that's 3 times. And you might be saying, that's only 3 times. And it's true. It is only 3 times. But it's 3 times that you've had to rearrange your schedule. I make the time. But I can see where other people are saying, why am I doing all of this? What is really going to change? The only time there really is change is when somebody decides not to run anymore, like a Linda Morad in this particular case. So there's a chance. There's one open seat on the city council. Ian Abreu, who used to work here at WBSM many moons ago, he and I were having a conversation, and an open seat opened up when he was running for at-large councilor. And he kind of had a sigh of relief because now he thought, my chance. And it has been his chance. And I think now he's running for his 11th and 12th year, or maybe his 9th and 10th. I've lost track after a while, but once you get in, now all of a sudden you get to the top of the list. If you're trying to get in, you're at 5, maybe 6, and then who knows from there on that particular list. Once you get in, it's a lot easier to stay in. Ask Councilor Gomes. 508-996-0500. And then next year, there's going to be a contest for U.S. Senator. We know that Markey is up for re-election. And according to one of the latest polls, he being Markey seems to be slipping in the polls. And Seth Moulton seems to be grabbing some of those votes. This poll was done the last full week of September. Now there's a new name on the Democratic side that's being floated out there, and I thought, you know what? I wouldn't vote. I'm not going to vote in the Democratic primary anyway. But I do believe that if Ayanna Pressley gets into that U.S. Senator race, she has a good shot. I don't favor her politics. But she's got the clout. And you know what she has? She's got the Boston crowd. She's got it inside 128. She's got that crowd. Seth Moulton, I think he's outside 128. Markey, he seems over the hill and far away. If Ayanna Pressley were to put herself in the U.S. Senate race for that seat that Markey currently has, I think it's hers to lose. And I sit here as someone who doesn't vote for Democrats. I sit here as one who does not favor her squad type politics. But I feel the people. And the people in the Democratic Party like what she has to say. And so I think that if she were to throw her hat into the ring, she would have a pretty good chance. Now, Markey is going to be formidable. I don't think that he's just going to drop out. But if there were two challengers, Moulton and Pressley, that might force Markey's hand. And then if you have Moulton against Pressley, could be tight. And now imagine this. 2 female senators from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And I say it like this because, quite frankly, I don't know, maybe you do, I don't know any Republicans putting their hat into the ring to run for the U.S. Senate this time around. Plenty of time to make that choice. But that window of opportunity is closing quickly. I think by January we have to know what all the parties are going to be here in the Commonwealth so that kind of paperwork can be meted out. 508-996-0500.
And bring about the freedom of these people by any means necessary.
WBSM.
He likes it. Hey, Mikey.
The government may be shut down. Legitimate business funding remains open. See for yourself at legitimatebusinessfunders.com. Legitimatebusinessfunders.com.
Imagine if today was the day your idea changed someone's life. Imagine if you could help someone pay for college, help your community build a new playground, or help a child make it to that dream competition. With GoFundMe, it's all possible. GoFundMe is the world's #1 fundraising platform trusted by over 190 million people. Every week, ordinary people meet their goals and do extraordinary things. Your ideas matter. GoFundMe isn't just for emergencies. Want to raise money for your kid's soccer team or raise funds for a small business, a creative project, or event? GoFundMe helps you turn ideas into reality. And help adds up. Fundraisers you start for someone else raise up to 5 times more. So think right now, who could use your help? Change rarely comes from waiting. It comes from someone deciding, today I'll start. Don't wait for someone else to bring change. Today, start your fundraiser in just minutes at GoFundMe.com. That's GoFundMe.com to start your fundraiser. GoFundMe.com. This is a commercial message brought to you by GoFundMe.
Freedom Pools on WBSM. Here's more with Brian Thomas.
You do not have absolute authority. No, you cannot act as a dictator. That's what Donald Trump is trying to do.
According to the latest poll, New Boston Post says Ed Markey is vulnerable. 77 in Lakeville, 77 in Fairhaven, 77 in New Bedford. We can get into that. I would be remiss if we didn't get into what could be happening in Gaza over the next few days or weeks, or maybe nothing changes. Hamas has stated that, they're willing to do the hostage thing, but quite frankly, they stated that back in August. And I believe they stated it back in July. So nothing has really changed there. But they want other parts of the 20-point deal that President Trump put together worked out. And as they say, the devil is in the details. So I guess we'll find out a little bit more about